Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Pace Edwards SwitchBlade hard tonneau cover, and we're going to see how it installs on the back of our 2019 Ford Ranger. A tonneau cover is a great way to cover up your bed and keep the contents protected either from the elements or from people walking by. This one being a hard cover is going to offer the most security because unlike a soft cover, someone can't just come up and cut through it with a knife. So if you're the type of person to leave stuff in your truck bed for extended periods of time, then this might be a really good option for you. And this particular option is going to be a retractable canister cover. So there's some pinch levers in the middle that we can use to release it, ease this back, and the contents will roll into this canister at the front of your bed. Now the downside is that it will take up some bed space, but a lot of people like this style because the canister will just roll up and sit below the bed rails, so no obstruction on the back glass here. And it is pretty quick and easy to operate, both retracting and deploying from the tailgate. So if we load things up and we're ready to close it, all that can be done just from the tailgate. So you don't have to walk the cover back like you might a roll-up or a tri-fold, and you don't have to go to the end to unbuckle it and redeploy it when you're done. All around you're going to get aluminum construction, but when the cover's closed, it does have a vinyl top to it, which gives it this smooth appearance, kind of matching the look of a soft tonneau cover while still giving you the rigidity of aluminum panels underneath. That should make it pretty weather resistant too, but for the most part, a lot of people just like that clean look a bit better than seeing all the individual slats. Now we've got a unique case where our neighbor today is using this cover in conjunction with a bed slide, which with that issue of the canister taking up bed space, it's only going to be accentuated by our bed slide today, so space is even more important. So I'll give some measurements and we're going to see how big this is or how much space it's going to take up. So from the bulkhead out to the end of the cover here, not the canister, but the cover itself, it's going to be about 14 inches. So whether you've got something like this bed slide or not, imagine you've got a big box and you want to put it as close to the cab as you can. This is going to be pushing that back 14 additional inches. So on a short bed like this, that's going to reduce your capacity quite a bit for hauling larger items. And then for the overall depth that the canister is going to stick down from the bed rails into the bed, that's going to be about 9¼ inches. There is, of course, some space underneath there, so if you had something longer and shorter, you could slide it underneath the canister, but it will be taking up some space there too. Now, rainwater can collect inside the canister, but you've got drain tubes on either end that will drain out through holes that you have to drill in the bed. Now our Ranger today had plastic plugs that we were able to drill through, so very easy to route those tubes outside and keep the water draining properly. It gives you a clamp-on installation, so no modifications needed for the clamps and installation. And the rear clamps will include kickstands, which help support the weight on the end of those rails, making sure that if you did set something on the cover, like grocery bags or maybe some camping supplies to load up the bed, it's not going to just buckle under the weight. Now, Pace Edwards doesn't list a specific weight capacity for the tonneau cover, but my general rule with my own cover is I'm not going to lay on it, but I will set things like groceries up there while I get my hands free to open my tailgate and load things up. And since you're looking at a retractable canister cover, there's a lot of options within that category, and one thing I might recommend looking into is something like the Pace Edwards Ultra Groove if you want to have compatibility with a ladder rack. If you're taking your truck camping and you intend to maybe put a rooftop tent or maybe carry some kayaks with you, that could be a really good option. Or if you're using your truck for work, having a ladder rack for lumber and ladders, other long items, while using the tonneau cover for covered locked storage in your bed for your tools, could be a really great thing to have. The Switchblade does not have ladder rack compatibility, so you'd have to look into something like that Pace Edwards Ultra Groove to get that. If you don't need that, then the Switchblade will be just fine. But with all that in mind, you're probably wondering what that install process looks like. There is going to be that minor drilling for the drain tubes like I mentioned, but everything aside from that will not make any modifications to your truck. The only thing that you'll have to watch out for is that the clamps for really all of Pace Edwards tonneau covers I found can be a bit tricky. If it feels like those clamps are binding up on you, you just have to change the angle you're feeding it in at, and it should slide up smoothly. The big thing there is it's just finicky, and you're going to have to mess with it for a little bit, but we'll show you how we got this one installed and give you some tips and tricks along the way. Now, typically with these covers, I like to wait until the canister and everything is actually in place before drilling my drain holes. But because this is a smaller truck and we have a bed slide in here, space is very limited. So I'm actually going to start with that. Luckily, the Ranger has these plastic plugs at the corners of the bed that I can just fully remove and drill my holes outside the truck bed. And that'll help me a lot with clearance. I'm going to start with a small pilot hole in the center of that plug. And I've just got this clamped to the edge of the table so I can keep my hands out of the way. I'll go back through with a step bit and widen it out, periodically checking to see if that drain tube fits well. That's looking pretty good. Because the bulkhead is at a weird angle there, a little bit wider isn't going to hurt. We'll feed this down pretty far, and being at a strange angle, it'll make it easier to feed the drain tube down. Once you've drilled that out to the final size, do yourself a favor and just pre-feed the drain tube through. It's going to be way easier to pull out a little bit of extra to reach the canister later than it will be to push the drain tube down in. Here, we've got much more control over it, and we can just pop the panel back in place where it came from. Now, this next step might vary a bit depending on your Ranger. This is going to be the sill filler, and you can find it underneath the canister cap in your packaging. It's kind of hidden away, but this is going to sit on top of the bulkhead between our bed rails, and ideally sit level with those bed rails to help create a good seal with the canister. Now, this is where it might differ for you though. Our Ranger has this piece from the factory already screwed into the bulkhead just with these two Phillips head screws. And if I were to set this on top, it's going to sit way too high. If I omit it completely, it's going to sit too low. With this replacing it, it'll sit a bit more level. So we're just going to take those Phillips head screws out and entirely remove this piece. Again, you might not have it at all. If that's the case, then just attach the sill filler, but we'll undo this. Now you might run into removing this where it's a bit tricky. Ours was not in very good shape. You've got this rubber grommet that we're threaded into, and as I turn the screw, it just doesn't seem to be pulling out, so it may get to a point where just a bit of brute force is maybe a bit better for you, where you're just pulling on that grommet until it comes out from that hole. I think with some pressure though, as I unthread, we're making some progress. There we go. And you might choose to leave that grommet in. Ours is really loose, so I'm just going to take it out entirely and clean off the surface area here a bit. Cleaning this off with a bit of alcohol will also make sure that the adhesive on that sill filler can actually stick properly. Of course, just wait for it to properly dry as well. We'll just peel the backing back and press it into place. Now, get it into a position you like and you're happy with, it's even, and once it is, you can press down and really let that adhesive stick into place. Then you can take the canister and set it into place. It's luckily not too large. Just make sure that the pull cord is unwrapped. And if you need to, you can always grab a friend. You want to just set that down and basically just push it towards the cab of the truck. So it's resting on the bed rails right here, and you can get it roughly centered right now if you want. Now we can set the rails in place, and you want to make sure you pick the right side. So look for a curved edge. That's going to face towards the tailgate, and the curve will be to the outside of the truck. So we have the driver's side right now. Underneath, there's going to be a backing on the seal underneath. No adhesive here, just protective backing. So peel that off, and there will also be a sticker that says left or right, left for driver, right for passenger. But if that sticker isn't present, that curve is how you can tell which side is which. Just take this up to the front of the canister. We'll slide it forward, making sure that the cover feeds into this track and that this latch, you might have to give it just a little bit of a push, but the rail should push all the way up to this stop right here. We can take the included bolts in our kit, lock washer and flat washer to the underside. This part will be hard to see, but if you go to the corner where the cover and the rail meet and just go in diagonally a bit, you'll find a slot where that bolt should line up with some threads on the side rail pretty perfectly. And then we'll just follow that up with a 7/16 wrench or socket to tighten it down all the way. The clamps will consist of a couple different pieces. You've got the main cleat and the arm that goes with it. Those will just slide into one another to make this shape here. And we're going to have a hand knob that we want to attach in there. That's going to get its own lock washer and flat washer and feed through from the cleat side. Now on the arm side, you'll notice this divot on the back. That's where this barrel nut is going to go into. And I'm just going to start it by hand for now. It's a little hard to do that with it all loose, but that assembly right there is what we'll take to the side rail for all 4 clamp locations. To find those locations, just look for these metal stoppers, and just to the inside edge of them, you should see a relief in the track underneath. That relief is where the cleat will attach. And this can be a little bit tricky to get it lined up properly, but just take your time with it. You might need a little bit of muscle to get it up in there, because I've noticed these sometimes don't have the greatest tolerances. And if you're having a lot of trouble, you might find that disassembling this whole clamp could help, but for me right now, it seems like this relief is what's not matching up super well, so I'll mess with this for a bit. Once you do have it in the track, slide it all the way forward till it hits that stopper, and start to tighten this down, applying some pressure to the rail down and out. And just repeat this for the other 3 clamp locations. They'll all use the same hardware. The clamps on the tailgate side will get 1 extra piece, and then it's going to be this kickstand. It's going to provide a little bit of support at the end of the rail to help level it out so it's not drooping inward like this. So this is what the main section of it looks like, and there's going to be a hole at the bottom of your clamp that you can feed that through. And I'm just going to unthread it here until it makes contact with the side of the bed right up there. You want that foot pad to be flat on the bed, not very crooked. So right there is pretty good. I'll secure the other side real quick. That hardware will be a flat washer, a lock washer, and a wing nut that will just tighten down to keep it in place. And then the little black hand knob, we can use that to push out on the kickstand just an extra little bit, and you can watch the side rail as you do that to see whenever it becomes level. We'll then take the drain tubes that we already installed and pop these ends into our canister underneath. There should be a hole right about here. I'm gonna have to get all up in the camera's way to be able to see it, but you'll do that on both sides. Your pull strap is gonna get secured to the underside of the rail. There's a section of hook and loop in the middle and a piece that comes in your kit that will hook onto that and have some backing and adhesive on the other side. Some people opt to not use this at all, but if you are driving around for an extended period of time with your cover in the open position, you could use this, basically just keep the handle out of the way. And I'll set it right about here. I don't want it to be too taut. Right there's good. And especially with our neighbor today using this bed slide, this will keep it out of the way if they're hauling taller items that just wouldn't fit under the cover. The end of the handle has another section of hook and loop that I'll wrap around one of the Ranger's tie-down points. And so all of it is just held to the side until we're ready to use it. One of the final pieces is the top cover for that canister. On the underside, there will be a sticker with an arrow saying what the cab side is. It's the side with this rubber strip. And you'll just lay that over top the canister. It's not super heavy, but underneath there's going to be 2 threaded holes that will line up with 2 holes up top on either side. Those holes will each get a Phillips head screw that will drop down into one of those holes, and you'll just run all those screws down to secure the cover. The last thing before we check for fitment is lubricating the sweep seals underneath. This wipe is going to be included under that top cover, same place where we got that piece from the very first step. And once you've done that on both sides, you can go ahead and undo the handle from that hook and loop and pull it closed. That looks good right there. I'm also going to check for tailgate fitment here. Check to make sure that we're getting a good seal on the tailgate seal here. Make sure we're not running into the end caps or anything like that. And once you're happy with the fitment, that'll do it for our look at and installation of the Pace Edwards Switchblade hard tonneau cover on the back of our 2019 Ford Ranger. Thanks for watching.